Hi, I'm Nick Byrd, and I've been working with Steve Stich and Justin Sytsma on the Religiosity and Reflection Across Cultures project through the Experimental Philosophy of Religion project from Hillsdale College with funding from the John Templeton Foundation. In this preliminary video, I just want to talk a little bit about the background motivation for the project and some of the initial pilot findings, as well as some future directions and challenges involved in the project. So you might be familiar with something called the cognitive reflection test. These are tests that are designed to lure people towards a particular response that, upon reflection, they can realize is incorrect, hence reflection test. So you're probably familiar with the most famous reflection test question. A bat and a ball cost $1.10 in total. The bat costs $1 more than the ball, so how much does the ball cost? And 10 cents is the answer that springs to many people's mind, often most people's mind, depending on the data set you're looking at. But if you think about it a bit more, you might realize actually 10 cents can't be correct, but 5 cents would be correct. This test has predicted things like political orientation and religiosity, but it's complicated. There is widespread evidence, in one meta-analysis at least, that across countries you tend to find this correlation between reflection test performance and religiosity. But there's some other evidence suggesting that you don't find this in every country, even if you do find it on average across countries, suggesting that there could be between country differences, something that might have to do with culture. So reflection sometimes predicts things like political orientation and religiosity, but it seems like the effect could depend on something like country or some other factor that is related to country, whether it's class or education, or maybe particular religious communities within different countries. So Justin Sytsma and colleagues have collected data from many participants, and in this data are people's responses to things like reflection tests, and as well as to questions about politics and religion and various other things. And it's a massive data set, so tens of thousands of people, which gives it quite a lot of statistical power. It also decreases the size of any given effect that you would look for in the data set, given just how much information is contained in the data set. So Justin Sytsma and I talked about the data and decided we would at least look into this question about relationships between reflective reasoning and things like religiosity. And what we found is, in the aggregate, you do find a relationship. The more likely that people are to fall for the faulty intuition on a reflection test, the more religious they report being. And the more likely that people are to get the correct response on reflection tests, the less likely they are to report being religious. But you don't actually find this in every country. Sometimes there's really no seeming relationship between someone's religiosity and how they performed on a reflection test. And you don't necessarily find it in every religious group either. And in some groups, or at least one group that we had in this data set, the correlation reversed. So this motivated us to look at this question when there was a call for research on religion with experimental philosophy methods. So we've been running some initial pilot studies to come up with better reflection tests and good questions about other aspects of religiosity so that we can get more fine-grained detail about these two different things and see how they actually relate. So in some initial pilot studies, we've been finding, among other things, similar effects to what has been found in the past. So people who've lost their religion since childhood do seem to perform better on these better reflection tests. And in a follow-up pilot study where we refined our measures even more and gathered slightly more information about religion and mathematical ability, the effect was actually even larger. So we are finding that reflection does predict religiosity, and we did find this across countries, even when controlling for various confounds, but not within every country or religion, which got us to look at things like whether reflection would predict changes in religiosity. But there's this question about whether these newer effects that we're finding in these pilot studies would also manifest in other countries and groups. So these are things that we'll be trying to test in the future, and there's lots of translation work and cultural understanding work that we'll have to do with our partners in other countries to make sure that our survey materials make sense to people in other countries, not just in terms of language, but also in terms of cultural context. And once we get that data, we can begin answering these larger questions. So that's where we're at now. These are the challenges we face and the road ahead. We look forward to seeing what we find, and we look forward to your ideas and interest. Thank you for your time.